Hello and welcome to another Succeed with Dyslexia show. We have an absolute phenomenal guest. I've been a massive advocate and fan of the incredible work that Hugo has been doing across the other part of the pond, so to speak. Hugo, could you just introduce yourself and tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Darren. So I'm Hugo. I would say I'm an entrepreneur. I've been working and trying to do different projects over the past pretty much 10 years nearly. I'm heavily dyslexic and dysgraphic. So, when I went to school, I couldn't read and write pretty much. And then now I'm running a startup called Dystech. And basically, we've built a technology to support dyslexic and, students with reading difficulty all around the world. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And whereabouts? Just because obviously with Succeed, we cover the entire globe. Whereabouts are you based?
Yeah, sure. So I'm based in Australia, in Melbourne, Australia. But the team that work at Dystech are a bit international. We have people from France, we have people from Spain. So it's a little bit around the place. But the main company is based in Australia, and most of the team are based in Australia.
Fantastic. And you mentioned that, I'm dyslexic myself. With regards to being dyslexic, were you diagnosed with dyslexia? What kind of age was that? What age were you diagnosed?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed around the age of 10, 11.
Okay.
And then after that, I actually been lucky enough. I've been receiving support for another 2 years of, teaching me how to read and write. But the thing is, I've never been labeled. So I grew up in France and I actually went to school and everything, did all my education in France. School in France is very hard, much harder than the English world. But I've never been labeled. So I've been diagnosed when I was 10 and 11, received support. And then after that, I was just a normal kid in school. There were no specific treatments, hence why I probably dropped out pretty early. But yeah, I've been diagnosed around that age, 10, 11.
Fantastic. And again, what was the kind of the over in France? What was it kind of was dyslexia perceived as? Was it quite well known and supported in that way?
Definitely not. There's definitely some tremendous progress that's been made in terms of awareness around dyslexia over the past maybe 10 years or so, maybe 5. But at the time, I don't really remember, but I do remember that it just didn't exist. Like I was not, like I said, I was not labeled. It was just, he's dyslexic and dysgraphic. I got some help, and then I was just going back to school, just normal. And I didn't receive any extra time or nothing. It was just maybe they thought I was fixed or something. I don't know, but
yeah.
So yeah, I think the awareness was very low. I think I'm really grateful to my mom. She's a social worker, so she's probably picked up that quite early on. That the teacher didn't really know. They thought I was just jumping around, and but mom sort of picked it up after a couple of years. She was like, "There's definitely something wrong." And my dad couldn't teach me how to read. He tried, and he was like, "I can't. I'm giving up." So been very lucky in that way.
Absolutely. And I guess, you alluded to, being kind of a child being diagnosed, then kind of going back into the school system of thinking, and I guess it's that education in the sense of you expect, someone to then take you to that next step and say, okay, so this is how we can support, this is how we can help. But if that's not there, the knowledge isn't there to know that you need that support, you're not necessarily going to know that you need it. So like you said, it's just going to feel like a normal, everything's normal because no different.
Yeah. That's right. I think that, to be honest, for me, I wasn't really aware. Like when you're 10, you're not aware of what's happening. Yeah, you're just going to school, you're just learning your life, you're literally discovering life at that age. Very critical age to learn and stuff like that. So you don't really realize what's happening. And so growing up, when you go towards, 14, 15, 16, you're always the last in class, and, it just doesn't, like school just doesn't work for you. Because there is not this labeling, you just assume that there's just that you don't expect something different. That you don't expect that you have some certain ability that's a bit different than your mates. So you just think that you're you're just terrible at school, and that's it, right? So there's no explanation for it.
Yeah, it's that you, like you said, no different in that sense. But
yeah.
Because we know within school, all you want to kind of really do is stay underneath the radar and just kind of fit in. And sometimes that element of not being able to get the exam results or, the test results can be, quite detrimental to your confidence as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's very hard, and I think I had a couple of discussions with other people around the labeling, right? And it's like, in some way, the most important things that we want is to be socially accepted, right? We want to be the exact same as our best friend in class. We don't want to be any different. If we're different, I think it'd be extremely hard for a kid to feel different, right? So I think I don't have the answer for this, but for me, from a personal perspective, looking back, not being labeled, and failing all the time I've been able to take this on, and I think I am where I am now because failing is just part of life, and I've just learned that, maybe the hard way, but I can fail and I'll wake up tomorrow, absolutely no problem, and I'll try again. And I've been doing this for the past couple of years. So to some extent, there's pros and cons, obviously.
Yes.
But support is absolutely critical. So it's a tough one. It's very hard.
It is. It does. I guess we kind of build that resilience without knowing that we're building that resilience, and it's only until we've kind of, like you said, we failed at so many different things in when I say failure, maybe the kind of the way that the education system is set out in certain ways, we fail because we're learning a different way, or there's a different kind of avenue that we need to go down, to get these. So what that we deem as failure, it's just because it's just set up in a way that we're almost set up to fail from the off, so to speak. But you're absolutely right. It does, give you that kind of resilience. I can look back on, like tons of things that I kind of failed at, and then, but that strength and that resilience. Someone asked, where do you get it from? And that, if I was to ask you that, I don't know. Maybe it's just, just keep on trying and not being afraid to fail at something.
Yeah. I think when you start failing at a very young age, you have a definite huge advantage over your peer. I've got a lot of friends, and I can see where I differ. It's not that you build a big ego. It's just that your level of confidence is much higher than the other person who, potentially didn't fail at an early age. And so what that means is that you're much willing to, your chance of taking risk are much higher. And we know that, taking risks generally lead to, highly successful entrepreneur or researcher or whatever, So I think there's definitely an advantage to it. However, is it worth it? Or, I think the main thing is really around, the communication, how you communicate to the student or the kid that there is something different. And how do you do this in a way that do not make them feel like they're different from their classmate? And that's a tough thing. Like, that's super hard to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. That fine balance to be able to do that is, and that's why I take my hat off to, within the, for teachers, because that is a huge task. So when you left school then, and like I said, where did you get, because obviously, tech and AI and everything, kind of that element of it. Have you always had kind of an interest in that kind of side of things? How did that?
Yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah. So when I stopped school, I was a printer. So I used to print business card and poster, and I was pretty good at it, So if you want to talk about paper and everything, I'm your guy. I can talk about this.
People used to think I was like insane, because I used to talk about a certain grain of paper. When I was having the paper, I'd go, "Oh, that is the grain. Feel the grain on this paper," and they'd be going, "It's just paper." And I'm like, "It's not. The grain of the paper. It's just not just paper." Sorry, I digress.
No, that's right. So that's basically what I was doing in France, and I was working a night shift, and it was just, and then I sort of decided that I needed something else. So I sort of translated my resume in English, and I was just applying to any printing job all around the world. Just, every time I was waking up like at 2 a.m. before going to work, I just click, apply. And I ended up having a job in Australia. So then I left France, which at that time was a very toxic environment if you fail at school, but also France has very toxic work law. So it's very hard to take risk, right? So I came to Australia, and then I basically discovered a new country, which, is very different, very accepting. The mentality is very positive. And so I started just learning stuff on YouTube. So, I was working as a printer, and then I just self-taught myself around different topics, business and entrepreneurship, and then AI came along, and then slowly but surely I was just absorbing knowledge on YouTube. And then I started my first startup in 2015, which is actually still up and running. It's just sleeping. But, and then from there, I went back to London, built some other consulting company. And from there, I was just learning by doing. So, make some startup, do some project, try and sell something, and then, get your first client, and then talk to an investor for the first time. And you just learn so much from failing so many times. So it really, I think the travel from France to Australia really opened my mind to something else, basically.
I was going to say that because that's a massive shift, isn't it? To move. Yeah. Because we're talking, a fair amount of distance, and then, going into a new country and then setting up and learning that side of it, incredibly admirable,
Absolutely. And I think, I'll have to give credit to my ex-boss, who's actually a co-founder here at Dystech. His name is Jim. But he was, I always had those those crazy idea of how we can improve stuff and blah, 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 and then he actually took them on. I was a kid at the time, I was like 20-year-old, and he was like, oh yeah, let's try what you're saying. And it was actually the first time that someone, an adult basically, which is my boss, sort of put faith in me. And, in France, that didn't happen for, forever pretty much. So, having this thing saying, hey, I actually have some idea, someone is willing to try them out, and some idea actually do provide a result, that sort of flipped the mindset completely. So it's an interesting one.
It's funny when you just go back when you mentioned about learning things on YouTube and learning by actually doing things. I don't know if it's the maybe someone else can kind of answer this question, but I don't know if it's the dyslexic brain. But for me, whenever I want to learn something, YouTube, I'm literally just watching. I can watch hours and stuff of different things, even if it's like magic tricks, or it's business, or entrepreneurship, or dyslexia, or neurodiversity, or all these different things. I absorb it by visual and obviously watching something, and then obviously acting. Is that kind of that's been kind of a great learning tool for you, in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube is my way to go. I do not learn by reading. It's very hard for me to, like, sometimes, when I do a bit of engineering on the product that we have, and I have to figure out things like most of the documentation, sometimes then they've written documentation. So it took me a while to absorb knowledge through this. But yeah, video is absolutely the way to go. Like, I absorb knowledge through video at a very high rate. I think probably the same to you. Yeah. So, and I could watch hours of something topics.
It's just amazing when I'm watching something, and it feels like it's talking to me and almost like teaching me in that way. And I just feel like I'm absolutely absorbing when I'm picking a book up, because I always feel envious of people that absorb themselves in books and just sit there and they can kind of have escapism side of it. But I know for me, if I was to read a book, 1.5 pages in, I'm very sleepy, and I just find it because your brain's just really struggling to kind of keep up with everything you're doing. So yeah, I'm an actual visual learner through things like YouTube, which is just been
absolutely. Yeah, it's the best. And the best thing about YouTube and all those online sort of video course, if you wish, the big difference with school is that you can pause anytime you want, and you can do whatever you want and come back to it whenever you want. So when you're in school, you have to sit down for 2 hours listening to someone on the board tell you something. You can't do anything else. So it's a different environment, I guess, but the freedom is very pleasing, I would say, like, being able to.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And it's something that I kind of relate to before. We take the school system, say, in the UK, we have, 9 a.m. till say 3 p.m. So 6 hours with, dinner break and stuff like this. But the hours, to sit there for an hour and say, okay, you're going to be learning geography or English and all these different subjects, for someone, there's a lot to take in to try and absorb all these different these different lessons. But you're absolutely right that element of sitting there for an hour and just absorbing this and then going to another classroom to sit there for another hour, I know for myself that I can kind of work best when I'm at my best. And having that kind of freedom to sometimes work quite late at night or quite early in the morning, all these different things. But within the school system, you really are kind of just, you're stuck within that 6 hour period, aren't you?
Yeah. That's right. I mean, look, there's also, I guess the things that you don't have with video is the fact that you can't ask questions, right? So I guess there's pros and cons, but, and I think that's why I believe in Dystech and I believe in what we do is that, teacher the job that they have is insanely complicated, and there's absolutely no way they can be in a position where they effectively teach every single kid in their classroom. That's not possible. That's not humanly possible, right? So it's a very, very hard job. And so I think, and so my view to this is that, if technology could support them and the student at scale, I think that would be the way, because otherwise you'd end up with 5 students in the classroom and 1 teacher. And that's, multiplying the amount of teacher by a factor of 10. That's not going to happen. But yeah, it's a very complicated, I think it's a very complicated problem. And obviously there's a lot of moving parts and it's very hard to, I think we discovering the solution as there's more awareness from government around dyslexia, as there's more organizations like yours who advocate and promote dyslexia. I think the more we learn and the more we are acknowledging it and the more we try things to put things in place, the more we come closer to, the perfect scenario and the perfect solution.
I completely agree. And what we knew about dyslexia a year ago, we now up until like a year ago and 2 years and 5 and 10 years ago, I can see it is definitely, there's, tons amount of work to be done. But I do actually feel, not just because I've been in the sector for quite an amount of time, but I can really feel there's a bit of a shift. And I think, technology and AI and I feel if you took, say, the educational system when I went to school, kind of the 80s and 90s, technology just wasn't there. But now it's so accessible, and there's so many different things that we can kind of do to help to include it into kind of quite a dated educational system. And I feel like you said, it can definitely assist and support in ways.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, I'm surprised we don't have software that when I look at other industry like health, for example, where you have algorithm who can take a photo of your skin and detect whether you have skin cancer with much more accuracy than any professional on earth in like 5 minutes. It's very surprising. We've been very slow in really pushing technology in education. And I think I understand why, obviously, when you refer to kids, that's sacred, right? You need to really be mindful around what's happening and specifically with technology. But I think that I don't know if it's good or bad, but there's definitely a gap with the current technology right now in health, for example, or in any other industry, and the current technology available for education. I think that, there is some piece of technology out there that could completely change education. It's just a matter of how long will it take to be able to start running the test pilot, to be able to have the go ahead with public school, and it's very slow. But there's been a huge amount of investment in that tech recently over the past 5-6 years, and I'm very optimistic So yeah.
And you're absolutely right. And if we took, every single day, children, adults, everyone is using tech, and it's almost, it seems in a certain way that when we're trying to learn something, we use tech. When we're in everyday life, we use tech. But when we take the education system, when we go in, it is a little bit kind of, no, we won't, we'll only use a certain bit of assistive tech, or we'll use these. And it is a kind of like leave it at the door in some aspects. And then you're taught in a certain way. And then when you leave school, straight away, you're back on, tech that can kind of assist. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It does seem to be something that there's something that needs to be done in that sense. It's just stopping it at the door for some reason.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I'm very optimistic. If you look at the US, for example, I don't know if you heard of the SAT, this standardized test that you have to pass for college.
Yeah,
so in the US. Yeah. So in the US, they've stopped that. They don't do SAT, and because of COVID, who's going to come in? Like, it's paper-based. Like, you have to take a piece of paper and sit in a room. COVID sort of shift that. So you have like the University of California, I think, is not taking SAT anymore. So, and they have calculator now. So they're going to move SAT online where you can have calculator. So I think we have to realize that we do have iPhones. Yeah. Right. This is the extension of my brain. I'm so powerful with it. I can know anything in an instant with this. We should embrace it, obviously in a healthy way, but we should make use of it to make. And so I think I'm very optimistic. I think there is definitely some shift. There's much more study on dyslexia. I think there's a study recently that shows that an economic study that shows that I think it cost $20 billion in 2020 to the state of California. Like, dyslexia cost $20 billion in 2020 alone in the state of California. So like, there's a lot of things happening. And if you look at dyslexia, it's very easy to sell. You can go to the government and say, hey, literacy rate is very important. Most of the people in jail have literacy problem. How much does that cost us? So you can go to the government and have an economical sales pitch, but then you can then also go to the family, of course, and then the individual. It's like, if you can't read, I mean, what can you do? Can you order food at a restaurant? Yeah. Can you travel? Can you commute? Can you plan holiday? I mean, what can you do if you can't read, right? So I think it's a very easy, like, there's not much argument to be made. It's just a matter of, well, sure, that's great. Like, but then so what? Like, what do we do, right? And so what we focus on, obviously, is the assessment part, because you have to assess to understand. Reading is very complicated. You have to assess to understand where there are gaps. But then the second biggest problem, which is the elephant in the room, is do we have enough people to provide support? All right, and so you can have super efficient technology in assessment, which is what we're sort of achieving, but do you actually have the resources to be able to provide the stream of support that's necessary to support all those kids? So
I couldn't agree with you more. It is that element of where we diagnose, or we find that there's a problem, but how does that then become in a form of support? And again, when we look at the kind of the finances and the numbers that you're quoting, and that we see statistically, year after year, it's catastrophic, the amount of money on there. But it's also sad in the sense of that you can see the journey of someone really kind of struggling at school, not necessarily getting the grades, not being able to kind of fit in within maybe in the workplace because of circumstances. And then we talk about the kind of the prisons side of it. You can see there's all these different points someone can kind of fall into a certain certain place to not necessarily no fault of their own in those aspects, but it's just that element of support really does need to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, because we do a lot of modeling on the impact that we're having, right? So from an assessment perspective, technically, if you look at a large scale scenario, so right now we've sort of been able to sort of combine roughly 2 hours of traditional paper-based assessment into a 10-minute online test. And if, when we have someone who's supporting 50 kids per year, and we save them 2 hours per kid, they are then able to support 60, so 10 plus. So if you multiply this by 1,000, that's an extra 10,000 kid in the support system, right? So assessment has a part in this, but it's not enough. Like, you know, and support, as you know, is much more complicated than just having a piece of software. You can't teach a kid how to read with software. I mean, you can help, but it's too complicated. You have to have a human intervention in this, because there's so much to understand, and there's also the body language. There's all sorts of things that, you know, you need to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a fascinating problem that, you know, I think a lot of people are working on, and that includes yourself. I mean, awareness is the first thing. If you don't know what you don't know, you're not going to do anything.
Yeah,
right.
And that's exactly, that's, you know, with all our campaigns, everything we do is creating that awareness, so then we can kind of, you know, speak to, you know, people like yourself and all these different people doing incredible things. And then it's a case of, you know, there's, you know, the awareness and the support, the resources. It's a whole, you know, amalgamation of you know, the whole kind of circle, you know, to complete that you know, that circle. So but yeah, absolutely, you know, it starts at the awareness, and then it moves on. And I just feel now that, you know, there are governments, especially, you know, in the UK, that are, you know, putting bills forward. There you know, there does seem to be a bit of a movement, you know, everything that we're doing, it's nice to see some kind of results, you know, with regards to dyslexia.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with government and legislation is that it does make economic sense. Yeah. It's like infrastructure. Does it make sense to build road? Yes, it does. You can make people go from place A to place B. So it's like, does it make sense to make sure literacy rate is very high in your country? Yes. And you can do some economic around this, and you can say, well, we want to spend that much on improving literacy, and it does make sense, and there's going to be some return on investment. You know, so I think the awareness bits is definitely is sort of the engine behind the whole, you know, support and tech and everything. Because as there's more awareness, there's more investment for companies like us to get investment from other investors, because they're going to be like, oh, okay, there's government talking about this. There's potentially something interesting there. So it's sort of it impacts the whole aspect of dyslexia. So yeah, definitely awareness is very important.
Hugo, listening to you, the passion that you've got to, you know, with regards to kind of helping people and you know, on, you know, the global scale is so rewarding to kind of hear. And like I said, I've been seeing that, you know, the incredible work that you've been doing. If we are coming close to our time now, but we would love to kind of have you back and speak more about your organization and again, you know, your kind of story and everything that you're doing. Hugo, if people wanted to kind of get in touch with yourselves, how would they do that?
Sure. The best way to get in touch with me would be on LinkedIn. So you can just look me up, Hugo Richard. There might be many out there, but I'm the only one who says CEO of Dystech. So yeah, that'll be the best way to reach out to me. And then if you want to learn more about the work that we do, the website is dystech.com.au. So Dystech for dyslexia tech. So dystech.com.au.
Fantastic. And we will put all your details and everything else in there. Hugo, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I believe it's the start of the day for yourself, but thank you so much. I know incredibly busy you are, but thank you so much again for speaking to us, and we will speak to you very, very soon. Take care, Hugo.
Yeah. Amazing. Thanks so much for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Oh, bless you. Anytime. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did putting it together. We have another fantastic piece of content for you. Please feel free to click this link here and learn more about Wendy Tweedy, the CEO of Phonic Books, and some of the incredible technologies we're using to help support the dyslexic community. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.